We've looked at the history and evolution of money from barter trade era to the digital era. In this lecture, we'll explore the Bitcoin protocol, the first known blockchain application for monetary transfers. We'll look into the inspiration of Bitcoin, an explanation of its protocol, and lastly, its adoption. First, before we delve into Bitcoin, it is necessary to establish the main points that influence an innovation like Bitcoin. From the previous lecture, we established that the world moved from gold-backed money to money backed by trust, that's fiat currency, by the end of 1971. Therefore, we stated that the main aspects of the value of money today lie in, first, consensus, the fact that we have all agreed that paper money has value, as stated by Milton Friedman, and two, in the trust of central banks and federal reserves. Finally, we saw that physical money is gradually being replaced by digital money since over 92% of global money is digital. So, three things. Money is digital, money is not backed by any standard. So, there should be no issues with digital currency operating on a blockchain protocol that ensures high trust and security. The only missing piece is consensus. So long as people adopt it, then the thought of having a blockchain-run currency like Bitcoin is not really far-fetched. Now let's look at the inspiration behind Bitcoin. We'll focus on the issues of intermediation and exploited trust. When it comes to understanding Bitcoin, it is necessary that you learn how banking systems currently work. Let's go back to our monetary transaction example from Module 1. Alexa wants to send $10 to Bill, however Alexa and Bill use different banks. Here is a diagrammatic depiction of the transaction. Alexa will have to go to the bank, example it's Barclays Bank, and make a transfer from the bank. This bank is the first intermediary of the transaction. For the bank to send money to another bank, another intermediary is introduced. This is mostly a central bank or the Federal Reserve. There's no trust between banks, so a third party is needed to enforce trust between the banks as well. The money then gets to the second bank, Bill's bank. Bill can then go get his money from his own bank. This is just the basic structure of bank transactions when two parties have different banks. Intermediation between institutions is very common. The $10 passes by 3 intermediaries before getting to Bill. The complexity of intermediaries gets more interesting in global monetary transfers. The money flows from sender to the sender's bank, then to the central bank in the sender's country, to get the money to the central bank of the receiver's country, then to the receiver's bank, another intermediary is introduced. There is no trust between central banks, therefore central banks use a large bank operational in both the sender's and the receiver's country as an intermediary. This means that the intermediary chain in global transfers is even longer. 5 intermediaries have been utilized as seen from the diagram to link the sender to the receiver. From the banking structures, we can see that intermediation is evident from the basic structure of both local and international transfers. However, the longer the chain of intermediaries, the higher the transactional cost. A fee is charged by every middleman. Indeed, intermediation is very expensive and its cost is incurred by both consumers, we who send money, and banks or other financial institutions. Bitcoin is a solution to intermediation as it uses blockchain technology to link a sender and a receiver directly without the need for middlemen while ensuring trust and security in its network. Let's get to understanding Bitcoin and its consensus protocol, also called the Nakamoto consensus after the founder of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto. So what is Bitcoin? A lot of us have already heard of Bitcoin from cryptocurrency markets. It is by far the most adopted blockchain-run digital currency. But what exactly are Bitcoins? Bitcoin is a form of digital money that uses blockchain technology to eliminate transactional third parties and allow for peer-to-peer monetary cross-border transactions while ensuring trust within the network. Let me break this down into 3 main points. First, Bitcoin is a digital currency. 2, Bitcoin is not blockchain. However, Bitcoin uses blockchain technology to facilitate transactions. And 3, Bitcoin allows for peer-to-peer transactions as it eliminates financial intermediaries from monetary transactions. Therefore, our beloved Alexa and Bill can transact directly, whether locally or internationally, without going through long chains of banks, but through Bitcoins. To get a better understanding of Bitcoin and its protocol, we have to explore its main properties. Bitcoin has 3 main properties. 1. Decentralization. Bitcoin uses blockchain and is therefore a decentralized ledger that relies on cryptographic proof to enforce consensus and trust in its network. Do not worry about cryptography and blockchain consensus, as that is something to be explored in more advanced courses. However, what you need to understand is that Bitcoin eliminates the need for a third party in a monetary transaction. 2. Immutability. When you eliminate third parties that were instituted to keep transactional records and ensure trust, many question whether that system can be trusted, particularly when it comes to transferring digital assets of high value, such as money. However, Bitcoin uses blockchain, as we discussed in Module 1, and is therefore immutable. Thus, once a transaction is added onto the Bitcoin blockchain, it cannot be altered and it cannot be deleted. Transactions are totally irreversible. The mechanics of cryptographic security and how this immutability is achieved, once again, is best left for more advanced courses. See the next step section for more details about this. Lastly, Bitcoin transactions are pseudonymous. Pseudonymity is simply a near anonymous state where a user has a consistent identifier that is not their real name. To achieve pseudonymity, Bitcoin uses cryptographic keys as your transactional identity instead of your real name or your real identification number, or any other identification details you do have. Let's learn more about this aspect of pseudonymity. Once again, every user in the blockchain network is represented by a cryptographic key, which is simply a set of characters, symbols, and figures. Therefore, transactions are added onto the public blockchain with the keys as identities. For example, instead of transactional records reading 2 Bitcoins from Alexa to Bill, the transactional records are recorded as 2 Bitcoins from random set of keys 1 to random set of keys 2, as you can see in the diagrammatic representation. The set of keys are unique identifiers that conceal your identity in the ledger. Therefore, all nodes in the blockchain network will have transactional records, but it will be difficult to tell the real identities of transactional participants. However, cryptographic keys are not fully anonymous. If someone happens to already know your unique personal key, they can easily trace your transactional records. Another aspect of Bitcoin to understand is the double spend problem. Double spending is simply a situation where someone can spend their digital money twice. For example, Alexa could have 2 Bitcoins in her personal account and decide to send it to Bill. Before the transaction is validated, she decides to send the same 2 Bitcoins to another friend, John. This is a typical example of the double spend problem that is quite common when there are no central authorities. What you need to understand is that in decentralized network, every node can create a transaction block and broadcast it to the network to be validated. However, validation takes time. Therefore, a malicious actor can spend his same balance on a different transaction and broadcast before the previous transaction is validated. I hope you remember the simplified process of validation as we discussed in the previous one. Now, the simple solution to double spending is always centralization. You give authority to one node and it stores all transactional records and it conducts all validation. In the previous module, we saw that in centralized network, all transactions are recorded in a central ledger monitored by a third party. Therefore, there's no risk for double spending as one, only the trusted third party is in charge of facilitating transactions. Validation of transactions are faster as there's no need of broadcasting to all nodes. This means that there's no time for a malicious actor to double spend as the transactions is being validated. And 3, all transactions can always be counter-checked from the central ledger, and the central authority has the power to reverse illegal transactions. Now, this is not the case in immutable blockchains, as validations require broadcasting to the entire network, and once a transaction is recorded to the blockchain, it cannot be altered or deleted and is therefore irreversible. So, it means like whatever centralization helps with in trying to reverse transactions whenever there's a double spend is not really applicable in blockchains. So the big question is, why shouldn't we just stick to centralization? If decentralization brings so many complications with a long process of validation that allows for malicious actors to come in and try to double spend, why? Why should we move to decentralization if centralization already is a solution to that? We already established earlier in the lecture that centralization leads to intermediation. Intermediaries are, however, expensive as they charge relatively high transactional fees to be trusted with facilitating transactions and storing records. However, we do have a solution to the double spend problem for decentralized networks. So centralization is not the only thing to run to. One of the biggest values of the Bitcoin protocol is that it solves the double spend problem despite being a decentralized network. The ability to prevent the double spend problem in Bitcoin is Bitcoin's greatest value and one of the greatest value of blockchain technology. Keep in mind that Bitcoin influenced a lot of the innovation behind blockchain because we use Bitcoin's consensus algorithm. The Nakamoto consensus, which is the Bitcoin consensus, solved the double spend problem in the following 2 ways. 1, we had timestamp servers for transactional blocks. 2, we have an algorithm called a proof of work consensus algorithm. Keep in mind that most of the consensus protocols used by different blockchains today were mostly derived from Bitcoin's Nakamoto consensus. Therefore, understanding the Bitcoin protocol is always key to understanding blockchains. Both of these topics we explore in advanced courses covering hashing, cryptography, and consensus algorithms. So I'd love to get deeper into how Bitcoin uses timestamp servers and proof of work to actually solve the double spend problem, but we'll need to learn more about cryptography and hashing and all these consensus algorithms to understand this. And that's not something we'll explore on our course, on our basics course. But you can always check next steps for more details. On to Bitcoin's market adoption. How has Bitcoin fared from its inception in 2008 to date? In 2008, the Bitcoin white paper was released. A person or group of people, no one really knows, with the alias Satoshi Nakamoto released a detailed description of the technology behind Bitcoin. In 2009, Satoshi mines the Genesis block, the first of the Bitcoin network. This marks the first public transaction in the network. In 2010, Bitcoin is used to make the first ever purchase. a guy named Laszlo Heinz, I'm probably not pronouncing this right. Hope I'm pronouncing it right though. Pays 10,000 bitcoins for an order of 2 pizzas. Now, this of course came to bite him given Bitcoin's current market value. In 2011, as Bitcoin was now getting into the market, the first Bitcoin for dollars exchange platform was introduced. This facilitated the exchange of dollars for Bitcoins given Bitcoin's growing demand. In 2011, still, Bitcoin began being used in Silk Road, a dark web marketplace by a guy named Ulbricht. Bitcoins were used mostly because its transactions were untraceable as they were pseudonymous, yeah, and didn't involve regulated banks. In 2011 as well, the Mt. Gox exchange platform experiences a major security breach. This definitely affects the growing adoption of Bitcoin. Keep in mind that the breach happened on the exchange platform, which was a centralized platform for exchange of dollars for Bitcoin. This was not really on the blockchain network, on the Bitcoin network. In 2012, Silk Road, the dark web marketplace, came crashing down. The shutdown was a huge blow to Bitcoin's adoption and usage, as over $1 million of Bitcoin was transacted in the platform. In 2014 to 2018, we see Bitcoin's pre-bubble and Bitcoin's bubble. Of course, at its best in 2017. Bitcoin attracts a lot of investment as its growing demand increases significantly, raising its costs or its prices. Bitcoin reached its peak of $19,000 per Bitcoin in 2017 December. Here's the Bitcoin price chart from 2008 to 2018, courtesy of the Worldcoin Index. 2017 was the major bubble year. However, the price went down and Bitcoin's range today from 3,000 to 6,000 at the time of recording. Still a significant high from the era of Bitcoin's costing cents. However, while most people jump onto Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as investments, the biggest value is the technology behind digital currencies and exactly how the technology is being applied to solve real-world problems. Finally, let's end with a summary of our rather long lecture. 1. Intermediation in financial sectors, particularly banking, was the biggest inspiration behind the Bitcoin protocol. 2. Bitcoin is a form of digital currency that uses blockchain technology to eliminate central authorities and allow for peer-to-peer transactions. 3. The main properties of Bitcoin are decentralization, immutability, and pseudonymity. 4. Bitcoin solves the double spend problem through timestamp servers and the proof of work algorithm, both to be discussed in more advanced blockchain courses, books, or articles. And lastly, we went through the history of Bitcoin, exploring major occurrences from Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, the Mt. Gox exchange, the Silk Road marketplace, and the pre-bubble and bubble eras.